Welcome to this chess video, everyone. In this case, white is actually in really good position here because they already have the rook on this open file. And so that is basically the decisive factor that is making white win this game. Now, how to do it, of course, takes a little bit of technique, and that's what this video is here for. Okay, so this is a much more common situation where there'll be one open file, but unlike the other example we had where white just had the complete control of it, now black is actually contesting this open file. And so the very brief thing I wanted to show here was that a lot of beginners will make a very common mistake here. If it is white to move, a very common mistake they make is they figure, well, let's just trade rooks. But the problem is when you trade rooks, they take back. Now they have complete control of the open file. And in most cases, this will be decisive. Now here, it's not so bad because we can eventually bring our king over and then support the open file with the other rook. But in a lot of cases, your king might not be that available or might be tied down somewhere else, and now you've just given the opponent the open file for nothing. And very similarly, if we go back a little bit here, instead of us trading, let's say we just play a pawn move, and now it's on the opponent. Now they could make the fatal mistake as well. Very common beginner thing is they'll take here, and that's a positional mistake, because now white gets the complete control of the open file. Like, why give up the open file for nothing? So when you are staring down each other, like in this position here, generally white does not want to take and black does not want to take. So the reason I started with the f-pawn here is actually intentional, because this is an endgame, and generally we want the king to be going up the board towards the center. Back to the Kmoch example, except here I've added a second rook. So this would be like a dream type scenario. By transferring the fact that these rooks are doubled on an up and down part of the board called a file, and transfer that to a situation where the two rooks are next to each other on a rank. So it's more or less the same thing, especially the 7th rank. So how that would look is something like here, rook to e7. And if they try and attack the rook, now we bring the second rook in. And it's kind of like the same thing, but now because we're on a rank here sideways, this is extremely strong because their king is cut off and there's nothing stopping us from just taking all of these pawns. Now, just to illustrate what could happen here, let's say they try and fight for control of the open file. Let's say they try and defend on the d file. Now both sides are trying to control it. Well, here we can just start taking this pawn with check. They have to move their king to g8. And notice that they do not want to go to e8 because that would be a checkmate in 1. So you have to be a little bit careful there. It's already very dangerous. Let's say they don't fall for that. Let's say they go to g8. And so you take this pawn and they go to the corner. And again, you can't come back because if you come back, this is a checkmate as well, just slightly longer. So that would look something like this. Give a check. They're forced here. We play g6, defending the rook. And now they can try whatever they want, but this rook is defended, and so we have checkmate with rook to g8. And this rook can't be taken because it is defended by the g-pawn. It's okay, so they won't fall for that. We will assume they go the corner, knowing the best defense. We give a check. They move over. We bring the other rook into play, giving a check again. And now we can just see that white is in complete control here. We can even grab the extra pawn if we want. We're up by 3 points of material. White is definitely crushing this game. And they're even threatening to checkmate in 1 with rook to h8. So they're going to have to defend. And this is really just no fun for black. White has many ways they can win. They can push this pawn, can even consider pushing c4. And long term, this is a pass pawn with 3 versus 2 on the majority here. White has 3 pawns. Black has 2 pawns, and long term they should be able to win. So there's many ways to do it here, but we can see that white is much better and able to convert this. So now let's go back to this Kmoch example, the little bit more tricky one, because here we only have 1 rook, and so unlike before, a move like rook e7 doesn't make sense, because we're not trying to double rooks, because there's no rook here to double with, and so we can't get 2 rooks on the 7th rank, and they would just chase away our rook. We have to come back. They chase us again, and unfortunately we're kicked off the open file because we're going to go here, and then they can play a move like king to e7. And long term, they can always fight for the file and trade, and it's probably going to be a draw. And if at whatever point white tries to stay on this open d file, black can now switch to play on the open h file. We have to think, how can we make this rank a little bit larger? So here we have 2 squares that white can move the rook to. If we can make it 3, then white could actually be winning. So the key move here, very difficult to find, is actually pawn to g6. So yes, we are playing a pawn sacrifice in the endgame here. And of course, if they do nothing, if they just move, if they shuffle somewhere, then of course we'll just take a pawn with check, and we're extremely close to promoting. So they really don't want to allow that. They really do have to try and take our pawn. And so now that they've taken our pawn, now we can bring our king up. And of course we're going after this pawn long term, but there's one other big thing that has happened. So in this case, they can try chasing our rook. And just like before, you know, it looks like they're going to get our rook. The difference is when they attack our rook, now we have this pawn, which is undefended, whereas before it wouldn't have been, because we've extended the rank to 3 squares instead of 2. And so now our rook is not forced to retreat. And so now we could like grab this pawn, they come back. Very easy to see the win from here. I'll just play some moves real briefly. And there's many ways to go about this, but this is one simple way that we could play. And this pawn is going to be very strong. We could also grab this pawn. It's just really over at this point. So if they don't go king f8 in this position here, then what else could they try? Well, if they play any other move, like say a b5 move or something else, then we're just going to bring our king up anyway. They can try and defend the pawn to keep us out, but really that doesn't change anything because now we just go after this new pawn. And they really can't stop us from doing that. They can try and defend, but eventually we'll just win even more material. Now we're up a pawn. They can retreat, and a move like this and we're just holding. You know, we're defending our pawn, we're attacking this, and white definitely has the winning endgame, even though the position started with equal material. So the main idea here was, of course, that very key g6 move to extend this to 3 squares instead of the 2 squares that we currently have. Now, understanding that idea, what if it was black to move it? If black knows that this sacrifice is coming, then they actually have one move they can use to try and stop that from happening. And so, of course, that key move is they can play g6 themselves. And now black is actually holding a draw here because this remains 2 squares, and long term the king can come over here and kick this rook away. So now that the king has no infiltrating ideas, our king cannot come up here because of course the pawns. And so what now? Well, we'll probably try and go towards the center, maybe like f3. They try and start chasing our rook away. We can come over, and again they're going to kick away the rook. And so the rook is going to have to retreat at some point. But now they can play king e7, and if we remain on this open file, well then black can just play their rook to the open h file, and they'll have some counterplay over here on this file. So if we go back to a position like here instead, we could try pushing a pawn, say like a4, but that really doesn't change anything because they'll still get the other open file. So now you know the key ideas to winning with a rook endgame such as this, where the whole idea is you get the control of the open file. In this case, white has the open file, and then you try and switch to try and getting your 2 rooks on the 7th rank or on some other rank where they can do a lot of damage to the opponent. And once that stage happens, then you want to try and make sure that the rooks can stay there. In this case, the 2 squares is not enough and they can be chased away, and so in this position white has to recognize that and then play the pawn move g6. And so when this is taken, now we have 3 squares, and the rook is actually really cannot be kicked away from the 7th rank. And so that is how you win a position like this. So that's how you use the open file to try and win your chess games. Thanks for stopping by, everyone. See you in the next chess video.